So, in the last video that I had uploaded about Gangstalking 101, which is like a course on it, and the title was False Victimization Syndrome, where you may have people that have a sense of false victimization, and we wanted to know why there was such an astronomical proportion of people that are discussing the topic of gang stalking. And are these genuine people? Are they people that experience some form of um, um, stalking to the point where it's it's a common thing for people to experience, or is there just a rise in the topic of gang stalking? So that was the purpose of that video. And there was a comment that was left on my page on that particular video, and I wanted to discuss it, because I have responded and gave some insight as to why there's a lot of content being created with the topic of gang stalking or targeted individuals. So I wanted to elaborate on it. The person had commented and stated that a lot of these creators who speak on gang stalking definitely got me in a state of reaction that the program wants to see made even worse for me, made me look how they wanted me talking about direct energy weapons, aliens, human-sized spiders are trying to steal your light. So they'll have people that give you the topic of gang stalking with certain aspects of it, like direct energy weapon, voice to skull, hearing voices, and what they call V2K, or I believe it's something about a god weapon. I'm not sure what it is, but it's like hearing voices, and then they have like aliens and human-sized spiders and trying to steal your light. So you have to be aware of why certain things are being discussed and how they're being delivered to you. So I told the person, righteous, it's mind control. The repetitive discussion causes the mind to be fixated on a particular subject. So if we are constantly hearing about gang stalking, and then there's that particular topic that's always presented to you, your mind fixates on that, and you create this bubble that you put yourself in, pertaining to gang stalking. So the repetitive discussion will cause you to be fixated on a particular subject. Personally, I know better. I know that you're not supposed to be giving your attention to certain things, especially when it's harmful. You create you create the problem by focusing on the problem. You're not supposed to focus on the problem, but the solution to the problem. If there's a problem, you don't continuously, pick at it. You always figure out how to solve the problem. When there's a wound and it's healing, you don't continuously pick at the scab. You put ointment on it and bandages on it and allow it to heal. So that's basically what I'm saying. I know better than to, to continuously talk about a particular topic. Again, even when I stated, what the cure to the coronavirus was, and as long as we heard about it, we seen it on TV, we seen people responding to it, the virus would be persistent. There would always be cases and cases and cases, because the more it's being shown to you, the more that it's going to be present. But as you can see now, that there's no discussion, there's no commercials, there's no fear, there's no, so we don't see that virus right now. That's just right now, until there's another rollout of a virus and the people are made or put into a paranoid state about it and spread it, because this is what the topic of this video is going to be about, how there's mind viruses that is mentally spread, from one person to the next person, into the next person, into the next person, so forth and so forth. So, I stated that personally I know better. I know that targeted individuals and gangstalking victims are created as a way to get those that don't fit into the agenda or programming of this reality to engage in a particular topic. It is often meant for the person to appear as delusional. A deceptive reality creates deceptive people, where the truth becomes the enemy in that reality. So if you have the spirit of truth, you will see the truth. You will be the truth and you will speak the truth. But if you see gang stalking, you will be gang stalked and will speak the truth about gang stalking. The truth is exceptional. So in a world where, the truth is outlawed, we have that in the history of most religions, and not only that, but even in certain other places where, the truth, or people that speak the truth, there you hear stories about them being ending up coming up missing, or them being targeted for, certain things. And because of that, the truth become an exceptional thing, because a lot of people become afraid to speak the truth when there's consequences and repercussions behind that ability. When we hear the story of Christ, Christ was one that, opposed a system, and he was ultimately, punished for that, at the hands of the people that was in power at that time. And a lot of people, because of that, would shy away from the truth, or would shy away from addressing certain things that may, come with a certain response. So, that's one thing that you understand about, speaking the truth. And then you have those that, are allowed to speak about certain things, but they don't have the same response that you would get. So that's why I stated that the truth is exceptional. It stands out amongst lies. So the more truth, the less exceptional it seems. So the more, a person appears to be truthful, and they'll speak about, a topic, and because the way that they are presenting that topic to you, when you're presenting the topic as well, truthfully, it won't seem as, you know, as explosive as it should, because there's so many people around that surrounds it with that same explosion. So, you know, we're trying to, you know, differentiate this from that, and this is where the false victimization comes into play at. So the more gang stalked and talk about gang stalking, the weaker the truth becomes about gang stalking. This is where the word and the spirit comes into play. The word of gang stalking, those that learn about it, see it, then repeat it, as opposed to those that are actually in the midst of gang stalking, experience it, and are able to, relay that experience, to people that may not be aware of gang stalking. So some have the word of gang stalking and tell you the truth they were told or learnt about it, and some have the spirit of truth, experience gang stalking, and tell you the truth about their experience. So there's false victim syndrome, and it has the purpose of mind control, to manipulate thought. When you are one that sees, gang stalking victims, and you believe them to be actual victims, but they are, not people that experience it, but one that relays it to you. That is a way to manipulate your thought to believe that, these are people that experience this particular program or this phenomenon called gang stalking. But for me, we have to find out what's threatening about them to a certain security, or what's so, exceptional about them that would make them be gang stalked. So these are factors that we would have to look at, as far as the victim and who the victim is, and what the purpose is behind, the victimization. So that's, going into detail about, the phenomenon and how it reaches a certain, level of discussion, which becomes astronomical. So if you was to go and, type in, see, even this, you would see that it does have a wide variety of people to choose from as to who's going to, you're going to get this information from. But at no time, would you see this particular person. You would not see this particular person who has made, numerous videos about gang stalking, gang stalking, gang stalking, gang stalking, gang stalking 101, gang stalking 101, gang stalking. But you wouldn't see that on this particular rundown. You wouldn't see a genuine person on that rundown. There's always, chosen ones, and star seeds, and gang stalking, and chosen ones, and gang stalking, and gang stalking, and gang stalking, they fear the chosen ones, and you understand. But as far as your content, you can scroll all the way down to the end of the discussion, and you wouldn't you wouldn't come up on here at all. You know, you wouldn't be in that arena. But what we do want to share is, the mind virus, which is um, what you want to call a memetic virus. You know, it's it would be, let me find it for you. It's memetic virus. This is the terminology that you would use for it. It's the spread of an idea. When you talk about memes, the memes that we see on social media. Because the other day there was a meme that was shared, or an idea that was shared, and when I seen it the first time I seen it, I responded to it. It was about how serious life was. Life got so serious that they stopped listening to music, and you responded to them. You responded to that particular um that statement by allowing them to know, like, the music that a certain people listen to has put them under a spell. And as I stopped listening to that music, I broke free from the spell. So that was my response to that. And then I was in a group setting, and I seen that same thing shared, and it brought me to the particular topic, the memetic virus. And how things are shared, like a virus. And this is one thing that, when we say we're going viral, that's actually what it means. It means that it's going to spread from this person to that person, and that person, and this person. So that is the reason for what viral and going viral is, and a virus. you know so it's actually a mental thing. So when we talk about the memetic virus, it refers to the spread of ideas or cultural phenomena that replicate and evolve similarly to biological viruses, often leading to significant influence on behavior and beliefs. So that is, the purpose of, things when they go viral, is to spread like a virus. What is memetic? Memetic is a theory of cultural evolution that draws parallels between transmission of cultural information and biological evolution. The term meme was coined by biologist Richard Dawkins in his 1976 book, The Selfish Gene, where he described memes as units of cultural transmission that replicate through imitation, much like genes do in biological contexts. Memes can include ideas, behaviors, styles, or practices that spread within a culture, and they can mutate and evolve over time as they are shared amongst individuals. So this is where, we get the term meme from. The term comes from Richard Dawkins, and Richard Dawkins is one that has authored a lot of books. And one of the books that he authored was it was the proven that the spread of God is a mental thing. And you have to understand that these aren't people that you want to call atheists, but he's a person that questions certain things based off of the fact that they uncover about certain things. But that's one of the things that you would encounter when dealing with who this particular person is, you know. And on that note, we wanted to show you that you did comment on a particular thing, and on this particular post, it was from Rico Also Funny, who's a comedian, I guess. Yeah, I know this guy, and he has 1 million followers, but he posted this, life done got so serious, I be riding around with no music. I don't want to hear, shh. I don't want to hear nothing, because life is so serious that you can't even listen to music now, but I seen that and I allowed him to know that righteous, I stopped listening to music and the spell was lifted. Our people are under a spell, if you know what I mean, so you did share that. You stated that, and then you started to see this particular statement being shared, collectively by different people. You have it here and in this particular group because you're associated with this particular sign. I've seen it and I was like, yo, well, why are we sharing a thought that's already thought of? Why can't we generate original thought? So it brought me to that memetic virus. So life done got so serious, I be riding around with no music, I don't want to hear. So this is another person that just copied it, imitated, and shared it as this was a original thought. Then you have another person. You got Jack Funny, another comedian with 1.1 million followers. Life done got so serious, I be riding around with no music, I don't want to hear, but this is, given as this is a original thought. Then you have another person, Nephew, and Nephew, life done got so serious, I be riding around with no music, I don't want to hear. You know what I mean? So it's a memetic virus, and then you do have people that would take it and share it, and then you have again, life done got so serious, I be riding around with no music, I don't want to hear, so we're talking about memes and mimicking, an idea, behavior, or a belief, and this is the topic of discussion right here, and we have to, look at the reason why, gangstalking in itself is so widespread, because it's a memetic virus that spreads from person to person, and when it becomes a phenomenon, these phenomenons is what's gravitated towards. The idea has to be, an exceptional idea, or one that is inclusive. These people can include themselves to this. Not that they're riding around without music. It's just that they can agree that life got so serious, because of the escalation of violence, I guess the rise of certain political things that are being seen online or on the media, and it becomes a way for people to feel as though they are included in those particular problems that are being seen publicly. you know so this is just basically what I'm getting at, that when we have ideas, they normally spread, from person to person, and it's no different from even, the gang stalking or proclaiming to be a targeted individual, you know, even ideas of, the what you will call a chosen one. These are ideas that, are shared amongst people, not that they are actually chosen, but they are just ones that see something and include themselves in it, you know. Like I like to state that, chosen people don't want to be chosen, so they would never put that title to their name. They are called to do certain things that they don't want to do. They're not one that says, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, pick me," and they are chosen. They have a certain thing that they are required to do that even they don't want to do it, but they have to do it. That's just how it goes. When we talk about Jonas, we talk about Jonas didn't want to do what he was called to do. Jonas was when we talk about that story, you'll see that he was reluctant, to do a certain thing, but he was chosen to do it. But you know, that's just your understanding of certain things, and also you have what a virus of the mind is, and also that goes into details, with religion and certain beliefs, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But a memetic virus is a concept that describes how certain ideas or cultural phenomena can spread rapidly and uncontrollably, akin to a biological virus. This can occur through various means such as social interactions, media, and the internet. Memetic viruses can influence thoughts, behaviors, and societal norms, often without individuals being fully aware of their impact. The characteristics. Memetic virus often exhibits traits such as replication. They replicate. They replicate. You know. It replicates. You know. It replicates. That's the meaning of this. It replicates. Even with gang stalking, it replicates. You know. You're replicating. You're replicating. You're replicating. You're replicating. You replicate just off of the discussion. They see it, you talk about it. They see it, they talk about it. They see it, they talk about it. So you do have that particular thing. Even with Young Thug snitching. You see it, you replicate it, it replicates, you replicate something that's a phenomenon, and then you also have the usual people that come out and discuss certain things, and the usual subjects. I mean, the usual suspects. They come out. I'm pretty much sure you'll see um, a Hassan Campbell. You'll see a Game Spitter in here. You'll see a few. Here you go, Game Spitter, the Game Spitter. You'll see them. Normally, you're definitely going to see academics. You're normally going to see, you know, just the usual suspects that see a topic and they discuss a topic and they continuously share the topic into another topic come out, and then like I said, it doesn't generate original thought. It creates um a robotic like people. These are people that are given commands and things to talk about, and to do, as opposed to a person that has genuine thought about certain things. Even when if I was to, discuss, snitching allegations, I would give you the original, thought about it. Like, first and foremost, when you're talking about snitching, you're being one that advocates criminal activity. You're one that has something to hide and is doing something illegal. So you, not only that, you condone illegal activity. You would condone doing things that you aren't supposed to be doing. That can put you in a position to be told on. So you are people that are against doing what's right, but in agreement with doing everything wrong. And even if the truth is what sets people free, you're adverse to the truth. So anybody that's in association with not snitching, or he's a snitch, you're someone that isn't fond of the truth. So these aren't truthful people, and you couldn't look for them to be truthful or to speak truthfully, because first and foremost they're against snitching. And that's the reason why you are able to see things the way that you see it, because you understand what it is. If you're someone that can be snitched on, you've done something wrong, that you can get in trouble for, and that's not going into detail with gang stalking. Gang stalking is you violating a person's privacy, and they may not be doing anything at all, but because there's watchful eyes, they can go back and just tell you, he picked up his nose, at 3 o'clock in the morning he was picking his nose, or he was doing, or she was doing. But that's not the same as snitching. You're really not doing anything wrong. And plus, these aren't righteous people that's watching you. These are criminals actually watching you, copying you, and relaying what you do behind closed doors, and then they mimic that. So that's the difference between that. As far as snitching, here you go with this particular person, this particular person, but it's memetic viruses, that is shared amongst people, so it's a certain thing that is shared in common, you know, you know, you know. But that's that, in that sense of, you know, just people capitalizing off of discussions, talking about these discussions, and profiting from them. Where it's easy to do. Even you could even be one that see a discussion and talk about the discussion and profit from the discussion, but that's not in your spirit to do that. You are one with the soul, and you are one that produces your own thoughts or your own thinking, and it would be adverse to what is strategically discussed and put out and sought after. And because you know that there's a problem with it, you don't add on to the problem. You are one that wants to add on to the solution. And as long as there's a way to benefit from the problem will be persistent. It will be an existing thing in this reality. All these people that benefit from problems don't want problems to cease and desist. They want the escalation of problems to continuously unfold, so they can benefit from the problem. And this is just what you see. And it's not like you're being delusional about a certain thing. Help me reach 100,000 subscribers. But this is the purpose of a lot of people when it comes to piggybacking off of topics. They get the subscribers, and the subscribers bring in a certain income for them. It's not like they want the subscribers because they just want us. It's because they know that this thing has it's an income generator. It's you're not going to speak down upon the people for wanting to have some sort of income and benefit from certain things. But when it becomes problematic to the mental stability of a people, and it creates a certain mindset or behavior pattern in people, and we gear towards seeing more negative than positive things, then now it becomes a problem to our mental health. It becomes we become our own worst enemy by feeding our mental illness as opposed to healing our mental illness. And like I said, it's always the usual suspects, and they always have some sort of insight into certain issues, and they don't even have appropriate wisdom to give about certain things. But like I said, I know that it's weird, but that's just that. That's just this particular thing. But also you do have the gang stalking, which becomes a memetic virus. Not that there's people that's actually experiencing it, but because it's an idea that they see and they can share in it. Because there's people that have profited from certain videos. Here's 12 clear signs you're a target of gang stalking. A person called himself narc survivor. But may not even be a narc survivor. How do you survive an ongoing thing? But You know, that's that, you know. And the replication, you know, they are easily shared and imitated by others. You know, the replication, you know, gangstalking is imitated by others, you know, and easily. You know, mutation, as they spread, they can change and adapt, leading to new variations. So new variations of, you know, gangstalking would be um, the belief that you're being hit with direct energy weapons, or that you're being burnt, or you know, anything like that, or you're hearing certain things, and they placing you get the gist of what I'm saying. But examples and implications. Dawkins famously referred to certain cultural phenomena such as religions as viruses of the mind, suggesting that they can spread and influence individuals similarly to how biological viruses operate. Memetic viruses can have both positive and negative effects on society, shaping cultural trends, ideologies, and even political movements. The cultural impact. Memetic viruses can lead to the rapid spread of ideas such as social movements or viral internet challenges, which can mobilize large groups of people for a cause or create significant cultural shifts. Criticism. While the concept of memetics have gained traction, it has also faced criticism regarding its scientific validity. You know, they don't believe that it's scientifically valid, that, you know, hey, these things, that's not true. But you know, I showed you, you know, this in real time. You know, I've showed you that in real time. You know, life don't done got so serious. I'll be riding around with no music by another, you know, another personality. You know, another personality. You know, you know, another personality. You know, so it is, you know, scientifically proved that, you know, it is valid. And the analogy, it has also faced criticism regarding its scientific validity and the analogy between memes and genes. Critics argue that the analogy may oversimplify complex cultural dynamics. In summary, a memetic virus represents the powerful and often uncontrollable spread of ideas and cultural phenomena, highlighting the dynamic nature of cultural evolution and its impact on society. Understanding memetics can provide insight into how information spread and influences human behavior in the modern world. So that is how, you know, the memetic virus, you know, spreads in, um, you see it, you know, you've seen it firsthand with just a statement and how it was shared. And then we have certain, you know, sensitive topics like, you know, gang stalking and targeting, and these are, you know, real things that, you know, came about at a certain point in time, you know, here, that was made aware, that the people was made aware of. I believe it was Edward Snowden that first discussed that, you know, the American population, the American citizens are being watched, illegally watched, you know. And from that moment on, we began to see patterns of gang stalking. And one thing that I wanted to share was, you know, this particular thing. You know, I wanted to share this because this is the only solution to the problem, is to seek, you know, not just restitution, but also that the responsible parties are, brought to justice, and that the program is brought to an end. So if that's not the purpose of the discussion of gang stalking, then it has a underlying purpose behind it. For people that proclaim to be victims to benefit from it, as far as the growing numbers of people that subscribe to their channel, and they profit from it. you know I don't want to profit from anything that's something that I see as a wicked thing, or that's unright, that if people had to suffer from these particular actions, that was found that it was the government, it was Freemasons, or it was MK Ultra, it was a program designed to target people and to harm people, like with drugs, and how drugs was created, how diseases was created. You wouldn't want to benefit from these particular agencies that were responsible for those particular things. And if they're all in cahoots with each other, then by you taking a part in benefiting from that, those particular topics that was shared by them, and now you take it and you share them and you benefit from them as well, then you become a guilty party as well. So the thing is to keep your hands clean, because there's a way for you to indirectly benefit or become guilty of certain actions of people that are guilty of certain other actions. So you wanted to discuss this. I seen this in one of these particular groups. We are innocent Americans under attack by our own government. So that is one of the reasons why you want to share insight. To make sure that you're aware that there's people that are responsible, that they shouldn't be responsible for it, because it's against certain things that they say that they're about. With this comes with what you call cognitive dissonance. To say that you're a upstanding or a righteous institution, but yet you are partaking in wicked and ill practices. So that is that. When we talk about cognitive dissonance, especially when you're talking about making good men better, but you're invested in criminals and allowing criminals to have a better existence by feeding off of people, or even the righteous, by taking from the righteous or deceiving the righteous. So we are innocent Americans under attack by our own government. Without warning, without cause, and without due process, we have been unjustly placed on anti-terrorist watch lists, targeted by the FBI, CIA, local police, and other government-connected operatives. Most of us have no criminal record, no history of terrorism, and no idea why we were chosen. You're chosen. Chosen to be targeted for. Why? Maybe you have ideas that are adverse to our ideas. So you're chosen to be in this list. So the nightmare began when the signing of the Patriot Act in 2001, a law that has been twisted into a weapon to secretly label law-abiding citizens as threat under this false banner of national security. We are being hunted in our own neighborhoods. So that is what you have to understand is that it came with the Patriot Act of in 2001. I believe that was George W. Bush that signed that into act after 9/11. And there's talk of 9/11 being an inside job that was carried out by the United States government, and it had the purpose of going into, just to create certain laws and certain wars that you want to, when we were talking about Bin Laden and following, chasing down Bin Laden, and then Obama finally finding Bin Laden, and then Bin Laden was caught, and then they threw him over the boat. Come on, we all know that these are fictitious things. And for me, you're vocal about certain hidden agendas that this particular people do, or that anybody does. If it's if it's deceptive, and you are one that sees deception, you're one that can also expose deception. So if you are aware that 9/11, on 9/11, I was in prison at the time on 9/11, and while I was taking my GED test at that same time, I was taking the GED test. I believe that a few weeks before that, Aaliyah had passed away, and we was sitting in the classroom, and it came on the television, and we saw it, so this is where I was at during that particular time. And that this becomes a part of American history, certain acts of terror that was waged on American soil. Now this becomes a part of the history of America. But you're also one that you can investigate certain things, and you can see that certain things aren't what they appear to be. So now we're coming to terms of, was that a stage thing, or was it a real act of terror? And my understanding of it is that through facts that I've encountered, just the facts alone that I've encountered, they was staged. It was all staged. And as you start to realize how staged certain things are, you're more aware of past and prior stage things. Like it's so many things that was set up and staged that it has no end. If you was to keep going and going further back and back into the history, you would see that there's a trail. And we'll get into that some other time, but there's a trail of staged events on the populace. And it's always the people that are used to make those ideas spread amongst the populace. And that's with the memetic virus, the virus of the mind, to have ideas and certain things spread through the people. But that was the Patriot Act of 2001, a law that has been twisted into a weapon to secretly label law-abiding citizens as threat under the false banner of national security. We are hunted in our own neighborhood. Once placed on this list, a person becomes a targeted individual, subject to a brutal campaign of organized stalking and psychological warfare. This is not paranoia. This is state-sponsored harassment. So, these are actual facts. State-sponsored harassments, especially if you have um, experience or history with, being stalked, so you can say that, are these people stalking me because they have nothing better to do, or is this somebody or something sponsoring them? So stalkers follow us everywhere, on foot, in cars, online. Our homes are broken into, bugged with hidden cameras, and filled with toxic gases. I'm not sure about, the toxic gases, but you're aware of, houses being bugged with cameras and, things like that. Our phones and devices are hacked. You are familiar with your phone and your devices being hacked. Your food and drinks being tampered with. You're familiar with your food and your drinks being tampered with. Our reputations are destroyed with lies. You're familiar with your reputation being destroyed with lies. We are manipulated, drugged, and even assaulted, right? These are the same psychological torture tactics used by the East German Stasi, designed to break a person down, to make them doubt their sanity, to force them into suicide, mental institutions, or exile. The perpetrators are paid with your tax dollars. They are given direct energy weapons, microwave radiation devices capable of causing heart attacks, strokes, cancers, and organ failures. I'm not too familiar with that. They use them on men, women, children, and even pets. And who receives these weapons? Narcissists, pedophiles, sociopaths, psychopaths, and hardened criminals. I can agree with that. People with no conscience. I can agree with that. Rewarded with cash, housing, benefits, and immunity from prosecution for inflicting unimaginable harm. This is not a conspiracy theory. To this day, I still don't know what a conspiracy theory is. You know, I simply don't want to delve into finding out what it is. So you can become aware that I'm a part of a conspiracy theory. No, I speak what I feel as though is the truth for me, not just an opinion, but based off of facts that you find through either experience or through experience and research, but you don't just find something out and then share it as fact. You either you prove it through actually hands-on experience. So that is one of the things that I tend to do. As far as theory, so I don't know what conspiracy theory is, but they said this is not a conspiracy theory. It is an extension of MK Ultra, which is the mind control, which the U.S. government-owned documented human experimentation program. It is illegal. It is immoral. It is an attack on the Constitution itself. We have been stripped of our privacy, our safety, and our rights. We are being slowly killed. And as far as the slowly killed, that's what can I say? We every day that passes by, we get closer to an expiration date. We are all on a timer. We are all on a timer, and this is not anything that you can dispute. But as far as us being here, unless you have the technology of taking your conscious and putting it in other people, which that's a real thing that it's been around for ages, and that's something that we'll have to discuss probably at a later time. But right now, everybody's on a timer, so some of us don't even care anything about this because we are dealing with a whole different level of understanding of life. So we demand, this is the only thing that we should be focused on as someone gang stalked or on a particular watch list. the demand and what you require, and the reason why you would speak out about certain things is because you have certain demands that need to be met. As far as the program, we demand that it be shut down or either used for righteous means. You know, we demand our names be removed from this watch list, an immediate end to this inhumane program, justice, accountability, and reparations, a class action lawsuit against the United States government. This is not just our fight, it is a fight for every American freedom. If it can happen to us, it can happen to you. The time to act is now. And they have, the Free Will Project with the Phoenix. I guess, this is the Phoenix. But, that is one of the reasons why, but for every American's freedom, if Americans are benefiting from certain actions of the government, they'll be less apt to be opposed to it. Again, if this is for some people to this is their bread and butter, they're not going to oppose it. Same thing with online discussions. If that's people's bread and butter, they're not going to want to stop discussing certain things. People can make a living off of other people's misery. They're not going to stop making people miserable. So that's basically the topic of what has that I wanted to discuss. Back again. You're talking about when there's false victimization, and there's a syndrome behind it. You'll wonder, why are these people out of nowhere proclaiming to be, targeted individuals, and why is there so much a rise of it? Because of the awareness of what's called a memetic virus. These are ideas that are shared as cultural phenomenon. They replicate and they evolve similarly to biological viruses, often leading to significant influences on behavior and beliefs. So if you didn't know, now you know that this is where memes come from. This is memes in front of your face showing you that they're playing on the intelligence of the masses, the psychological warfare, and also mind control. We see mind control right here. This is a form of mind control. This idea was shared, and the mind gravitated towards it to the point where it copied it and it shared it in its own. Because here you have one meme, the crying meme with the sad face, and the laughing meme, emoji, the crying emoji, the crying emoji, the crying emoji, you know, you know, uh, you know. But there you have mind control. You know. But, I just wanted to share that, you know, because it needed to be shared. And I hope that gives you a little bit of insight as to the escalation of why certain ideas are shared, why there's a growing amount of people that partake in particular topics, and what system do they all partake in? Why are they, always discussing a particular topic when it becomes a topic of discussion? You know, and who do they work for? You know, but we do know, who they actually are in cahoots with. But yeah, I wanted to share that, you know, you know. So peace.